Okay, other than they had some, like, they had diverse body types. They had a non-female supporting character, and I think they also had some minor queer and people of color representation.
Yeah.
So good on that, I guess, except the only person who was, anyways, it was not good.
Yeah, if
and
they would have made the
fault.
movie,
Keanu is the only good part.
If they would have made the movie about literally anyone else in that center, then what's that little girl, Lily Collins, I would have probably liked it a lot, but nah.
Especially with Keanu.
Oh,
I mean,
Keanu.
You have the diverse representation, and then you put Keanu Reeves on top of it, and that's recipe for success.
Mm-hmm. He can make
but
anything.
No.
Yeah, he can make anything. Like,
watch the movie just for Keanu. I'm kidding. Don't watch it.
Okay. Yeah. So these are some of the just movie posters or television posters for these movies. And what sort of things do just the posters tell us about what eating disorders are, who gets them, anything like that? If anyone wants to jump in.
It's very white female dominated.
It's also mostly representing an anorexic diagnosis and not representing other diagnoses.
I'm the special guest, so I'm gonna pop in too. I would even expand on that to say, like, because I think most, if not all of us, know, like, you can have a restrictive eating disorder no matter your body type. However, in media, they only choose to portray it with especially thin white women. So, I mean, that's what you're going to see no matter where you look. So that'd be a big one.
Yeah.
Also,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say they're also all like young women.
Yeah, for sure. Very, very bland just from the posters. Very predictable.
I suppose you could say they have no flavor.
Stop it. Don't make that joke. Oh my god.
It's fine. It's punching myself. It's not punching up or punching down.
You were born to be a dad.
A little bit of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we thought long and hard about this, of how to split up different types of media, because there are many different types of eating disorder media, and they're all very different in how they're executed. So we split it into like 9 parts, I think. So the first category is movies. And under movies, you have your made-for-TV movies. These are going to be on Lifetime, Hallmark, your For the Love of Nancy's, your Starving in Suburbias. Yeah, usually very low quality. Documentaries, you got Thin, Dying to Be Thin, a bunch of stuff on YouTube, a bunch of stuff on Amazon Prime. Yeah. And then your blockbuster movies that kind of start popping up after 2006. And you got To the Bone, you got Feed with that girl from Pretty Little Liars. Soulless, that's on Showtime, which is my personal favorite because it's like the only good one I've ever seen. And then we go to TV. And so in TV, we have your special episodes and plot lines. And these are eating disorder plot lines in shows that aren't about eating disorders necessarily. So this is like Cassie and Skins. Who's that girl in This Is Us? The pregnant one now. Sims. Cassie and Sims. Yeah, the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody episode. The Full House episode with DJ. All of those. There's many, many, many of those. Eating disorder TV shows, and these are TV shows that are either about eating disorders. Oh yes, there is an eating disorder episode of Sweet Life. It's the one where they're doing the modeling thing. And Maddie in London, Maddie like is trying to lose weight and London is trying to gain weight or something. I don't know.
I will say, when we first started talking about podcast ideas and this presentation, I asked the same question because they were like, yeah, Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. And I was like, what? And it took me a solid 5 minutes to remember that ever happened. And that's on what? Dissociation. That's a joke. That's a joke. For legal reasons.
Okay, you have your eating disorder TV shows. These are either just about eating disorders as a whole or have like a main character with an eating disorder. So there's one called Starved where, I mean, all the episodes are on YouTube. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's they're all on YouTube. That was from like early 2000s. There's Red Band Society, a classic. Starving Secrets, which I think was a UK show, but I'm not sure. And then you have the shows that aren't about eating disorders per se, but in the eating disorder world, among people, they've kind of become this like eating disorder culture that a lot of people share. And that's your super size versus super skinny, your interventions, your My 600 Pound Lives, that people just kind of like obsessively watch. Yeah. And then finally, you've got YouTube. Now, YouTube is a weird place for eating disorder content. There's a lot of short films on there. Okay. There's many eating disorder short films on YouTube. There's YouTube series, which are like TV shows, but they're on YouTube. So that's Binge with Angela Golner and Overshadowed, which is another UK one. And then, YouTubers, which is another kind of like eating disorder culture thing. But there are people that like have YouTube channels where they like specifically talk about their eating disorder or their recovery or something. But the eating disorder culture YouTubers that don't really talk about it as an eating disorder, but the people with eating disorders kind of flock to. So your Eugenia Cooney's, your Freely's. Yeah. So that's.
I'd love to say, because, sorry.
No, do it.
I'd love to say, because I know this is a shared experience. My favorite subgenre of YouTube short films, The Sims videos. So crazy, so chaotic.
Yeah.
There was one in which a police officer said to a mother, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your daughter was found dead in a hole after she dug her own grave."
What the heck?
It's a different level of chaos. Also, sorry
Yeah.
if that was not an okay thing to say. Just shut me up sometime.
People that do Sims.
Chaos.
They make these videos.
They're messed up.
They make movies
Love
on
Sims, but
it's wild.
But that's my favorite subgenre of short film. Anyways.
So I did some counting, some little personal research. And I figured out just how many people of color there are in these films and these TV shows, what their ages are, and the genders. And, you see with the percentage of people of color is very low. About 2 movies and 2 TV shows that feature a person of color with an eating disorder, which is very problematic because, well, I'll get to that on the next slide. But we know that people of color are usually a little more susceptible to developing an eating disorder, but way less likely to be diagnosed. And then the gender of characters is about 6% male and 97% female. And we see absolutely no trans representation of people with eating disorders. And which technically is kind of close to the statistic that they publish is, 10% of people with eating disorders are male, but it's also been estimated that it's much higher than that, and it's just due to like low reporting. And then the age that we have here is like the biggest very stark difference. We see most people in these films and TV shows are about 12 to 25, about 91%. and there's about 9% where they're older than 25 or like adults. And so why are these demographics problematic? Like I was saying before, people of color experience eating disorders at a much higher rate than white people. They're also much less likely to be diagnosed or ever receive treatment. And then eating disorder diagnoses are about the same across all ages. There is a little increase in like teen and adolescents, but usually that's due to being diagnosed earlier. But eating disorder pathology kind of stays the same across all ages. Like I said earlier, it's suspected that men experience eating disorders at higher rates than reported. And then the biggest one here is, there's absolutely no trans representation in any eating disorder media I can find. But we know that trans people experience eating disorders at much higher rates than their cis peers. Yeah. Representation of fat people with anorexia or bulimia is a big 0. If we see a fat person in eating disorder media, it's always that they have binge eating disorder, which we also know isn't true, because literally only like, well, I think that's on the next slide. Yeah, less than 6% of people with eating disorders are described as medically underweight. So we see this huge just disrupt here. Also, a lot of people with restrictive eating disorders won't ever lose any weight. And we always see this trope in these films and these TV shows that they are losing a bunch of weight, and that's how people know. And this is a quote that I got from an article. The article was called "How Eating Disorder Media Failed Me as a Black Woman." And Raquel says, "The media is not to blame for my eating disorder, but it never showed images of girls who looked like me or suffered with disordered eating the way that I did, which absolutely contributed to preventing me and my family from recognizing that I was sick sooner. If the media wants to be accurate and responsible, the scope of disordered eating representations must be broadened to reflect the diversity of those suffering," which is a big true. So I decided to do a little case study on starving in suburbia, because I figured, some of us may not have ever seen an eating disorder film. This might not be
If you're lucky.
Yeah, this might not be as much of a shared experience that we think. So I was like, let's walk through something. So basically, Starving in Suburbia is pretty much hailed as the worst eating disorder movie of all time. Very, very bad content. Again, you can watch it all on YouTube. But basically it starts out, Hannah, the main character, she's a high school dancer. She's like a senior or something. And then she develops an eating disorder pretty much overnight after visiting a Tumblr-like website that had a bunch of inspiration on it. And then, so, well, this is why I don't paraphrase. So yeah, she goes on this crash diet, and it like very quickly spirals into an eating disorder. And so some things about this are that it ignores kind of how eating disorders have this complex cause. So, we literally see the only thing that goes into it being her connecting with this person online, and like looking at the inspiration. When we know that developing an eating disorder is, a lot more nuanced than that. And then it also frames eating disorders as a choice. We see that she's like, this whole time, she's like, yeah, I would love to whatever, butterfly Anna, like, and like, are you raising your hand, Tree?
Yes.
Oh, talk.
I got scared I was interrupting too much.
No.
Okay. I was also going to say, I think it's important to note that representations of spaces like these in the media, as they're portrayed in this, severely villainizes them, which I believe is overall harmful. And I'm not saying that these spaces are good places to be. I'm not saying they are at their essence good, but I am saying that when I was at my worst, like, That's where you get the harm reduction resources. That's where you get the other people who will listen to what you're saying. Not a good space. Don't encourage it. However, this portrayal of it in the media so greatly contributed to people's negative thoughts surrounding it that it became even more unsafe and even more secretive, which is worse. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to chip in with that while it was on the table.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I mean, obviously in these like pro Anna spaces online and stuff, there are the inspiration. There are your people that want to encourage you to have an eating disorder. There's always going to be that. At the same time, a lot of, you know, what we see there is people coming together because they don't have supports in their life, or getting harm reduction resources because nobody else will tell them anything other than go to treatment. So yeah, the way that they kind of villainize it, and also it's very reductionist as to, you know, what it is. So and then so we get to this thing where she has this basically anorexic coach called Butterfly Anna, and she's encouraging her to like starve herself, and giving her advice on how to like hide it from people. And during these montages and stuff, the colors that we see, and like it's all very romanticized. We have this like shimmering colors, we have this upbeat music, we have these colorful backgrounds. The Butterfly Anna is made to look like a beautiful model, and like her savior and everything. And then when they go through this montage of like her weight loss and restricting and stuff, it's just all this positive music. And she's like getting all these compliments from people around her. And basically this implication is that, you know, anorexia is like rebellious, and it's beautiful, it's glamorized, it's desirable. Yeah. And then at the end of the film, it darkens a little, you know, they all do. And then basically after her parents are like, what the heck? She recovers overnight. And she stays at the low body weight that she was in, and doesn't really have any effects beyond that. And so kind of from that, we get this kind of message that anorexia is a phase, that, you know, recovery is just going back to your regular self, your regular body, whatever. Yeah, chaotic. So just the points kind of summarized. So, you know, we see that these people, it's demonizing people with eating disorders through this Butterfly Anna character. And saying basically that those with like everyone with an eating disorder wants others to have eating disorders, and like they're encouraging others, they're teaching others. It has an unrealistic recovery path. It frames eating disorders as a choice that are like only invoked by social interaction and media consumption. And then it glamorizes eating disorder behaviors and weight loss. And so this kind of leads me to some of the overall tropes of eating disorder media. For some reason, every eating disorder movie starts out with them running. For the Love of Nancy, To the Bone, Hunger Point, Kate's Secret, they're all running. Which, what are you running from? I don't know. Is this supposed to be a metaphor for something? Very weird. Yeah, it's very weird. I don't know why. I don't know. It's just weird. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily harmful, but it's like, why get some originality?
It's always going to be, look at the sad, thin white teenager running.
Yeah.
Oh, her life is ruined. She can no longer run. Yeah. Bro.
It always has this strain between the parents and the person with an eating disorder, usually like this hiding thing, which, you know, a lot of times is realistic. A lot of these things we see are realistic. It's usually the way that they're executed that is just really a mess. Underweight white teens, a classic hallmark of any eating disorder representation. The classic rib shot. The classic rib shot. Have you ever seen an eating disorder movie or TV show without a rib shot? Not me.
I feel like I actually got to think about that for a second because I don't think I have.
Yeah, I really don't think there is one.
Not even the Sims YouTube subculture. They all got them.
Yeah. And then we see that they're either ended in this like very easy resolution or death. And this has changed a little bit with like the new eating disorder films, like To the Bone. I don't super remember how it ended, but I know it wasn't really like that. And then Feed and stuff. But they're usually ended very like abruptly and with like they kind of just want to tie up loose ends. Very weight and food centric. They're always focusing like very mostly on like the weight and food piece of it all, and also like body image. And then there's usually a hospitalization in these. Any more that anyone can think of? I can't. We covered our bases. Next. Okay, so now just a little bit of a discussion. She's usually caught when she passes out. Yes, the passing out. They always pass out. And I think people would be surprised, people without eating disorders, I guess, would be surprised to know that I would venture to say most people with eating disorders never pass out. So I don't know. They're wild. Okay, a little bit of a discussion. Let's open the floor. So why do we sensationalize eating disorders in their most extreme forms for media? Why don't we see diet sodas? Okay, but is that a trope of eating disorder media or is that a trope of eating disorders?
Both, and I would also extend it to not only the diet soda, but like when they're at work and someone's like, "Hey, you want the rest of this sandwich?" and it's just like a cut to their face where they're like,
yes.
Perfect trope.
That's a good one.
Perfect.
Yes, internalizing
Anyways.
the passing out trope. Mood. Who
Oh
here
God.
has ever
I did
thought that
that.
they weren't sick enough because they've never passed out? What?
Put a finger down.
Put a finger down. Very weird. Yeah, so this media, we always see this most extreme form of an eating disorder. And why is that? Why do we have to sensationalize the most extreme form? Why can't we see somebody that's like,
Healthy people have opinions. Strong opinions, bad opinions. And these movies are always made. I talk a lot. I'm sorry to everyone here who's like, who the heck is that? I talk.
Mhm.
These types of media are always made to bring attention to the issue by, I would dare to even say, like, fetishizing those who are struggling. Like, if y'all have heard the phrase trauma porn, that's what most of these are. It's meant to play to an audience who does not struggle with it and tries to bring attention to it by saying, these are the signs, when, like, I don't know a single person whose experiences have mirrored that of what we see in media. I don't know anyone who has gone through that in the same way. And so it's saying, these are the common signs, look out for this, but it's just doing more harm, and people don't bother to look at that.
Mood. Okay, Kate, then Megan, then Cassie.
Yeah, so in high school, I raised a lot of money for Nita, or not like a lot, but I raised some money for Nita with selling like jewelry, and the local news station like picked it up and like wanted to like help me share my story or whatever. And they were like, "Yeah, can we have pictures of you when you were at your worst?" And I said no, and so they didn't do the story because I wouldn't give them transformation pictures. So there's that.
That is terrible. The first thing that something like comparatively that I thought about with this is It's kind of, I guess, the same reason why when Black Lives Matter and all the protests were happening, a lot of what you saw was just like the riots and like burning and even though that's such like, it's not even the movement, and even then it's such a small percentage of what actually happens. But with anything in media, you're trying to catch attention, so you're going to focus on the most like extreme events to try and draw the most attention to it, even if it's not the most accurate.
I definitely think that's a great point. I have like 2 points. One, I want to add to like a huge thing about like my just personal recovery like beginning is I didn't get any help until like so much later because of like this representation. And I was like, oh well, I didn't do this. I never passed out and was put in the hospital, so I can't have an eating disorder. And that was literally my line of thinking for so many years. And it's just like, that's so harmful. And then my second point I wanted to just say was that I think that like maybe in talking about like why does the media sensationalize eating disorders, and I definitely think that part of it could be about the guilt from how the media like pushes eating disorders and pushes diet culture. So then in response to that, they give us these eating disorder movies that are supposed to be like uplifting and beautify it and like make it such like this girl's journey. And so I think that may be like a thing, but I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaliyah.
I was gonna say something similar to what Megan said, where like they show the most extreme forms because like, you know, that's what grabs the most attention. But on top of that, like, you know how you said that the people they use are often like white, like they're usually like pretty white girls and stuff, like pretty skinny white girls. And I remember a saying a while ago where it was like, you know, the comments there, it's like men don't respect women unless they find them attractive. So like they often just use like attractive women who are struggling to make people sympathize with them more. And on top of that, like, oh, another reason I think is because in a way, I guess maybe sometimes the director might have good intentions. They were trying to show like the extremity of the eating disorder, but in doing so, they kind of just completely undermine all the others, like all like the real symptoms, if that makes sense, like the not the extreme ones. And also people always want to see like a resolution, like a quick resolution, and they don't want to see like the relapse and like the constant struggle that still happens even during recovery, because like that's just what movies do. They just want people to like see the good side, I guess, like the resolution at the end. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was interesting what you brought up, Kate, about the the like media, the journalism media, which is a whole other thing, which like I've done a lot of like interviews in like video and like text interviews for eating disorder related stuff. And they always ask for that. They always ask for like sick pictures. They ask for specific weights. They ask for other things. Me and Tree were like doing a dramatic reading of this case study that I was in for Seed a couple of nights ago. And literally, it's just so sensationalized. It's so like, oh, and Katie has already been in the hospital, blah, blah, blah. And it's like they want to use like the absolute worst thing that they can tangibly see because the internal process isn't enough for them because they can't see it. It's very just wild.
I can't believe we forgot about the media.
Not the
We're
media.
not going to talk about that Dr. Phil episode with the twins?
Oh my goodness.
I'm just joking.
Not
Oh
the
my gosh.
twins.
But I can't believe we forgot about that.
Yeah.
It was up here.
It was up here. We also were going to talk about eating disorder music. I saw the light. Very wild.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. What would some components of an accurate representation of eating disorders in media entail? This is the big question, you know, like how do we make media that is accurate, not glamorizing? Yeah. Go on, Cassie.
I think that like the first like main simplest thing would make it like not focused on one character. Like if you have a movie or a show, it needs to be focused on, it needs to be an ensemble, not just focused on one person.
True. Yeah. Like documentary style. That just I makes me think about Thin. Yeah, no, I think that would be a good idea, not really having this protagonist, because yeah, the instance of a protagonist does kind of center it around only one story, doesn't really give space for anything else. Go ahead, Aaliyah.
You like what you said earlier, trans people, more people of color, definitely more men in the representation. Oh, and one point you brought up is like one of the tropes was they usually resist treatment or they get angry at it. I know a lot of people who really do want help, but often like they're too afraid to ask for help, or the environment that they're in just like isn't really encouraging. Because I noticed, like for example, Into the Bone, like her parents and stuff, they even sent her to the treatment center and all of that. But there are a lot of people who do want help, but they don't have those resources, and that's specifically like common in a lot of like minority households where mental health is stigmatized. So, yeah.
I also feel like if they really wanted to like represent everybody's experience with treatment too, like addressing the financial side of things could be like if the goal of a director is really to like bring attention to the real issues, like that is something changeable that we can like enact policy on, is like making inpatient and residential and partial like hospitalization treatment like more affordable, so that like I mean that's something that helps people in different socioeconomic statuses have better access.
Yeah, going off of what you were saying about people like wanting treatment and stuff, I think too that what makes the resistance and stuff in the media so dangerous is that you know, eating disorders already have kind of a stigma around them as people who suffer with them being manipulative, being non-compliant, and like not wanting treatment. And oftentimes, like in treatment centers, people will get sent home for non-compliance. And like insurance is behind that usually because they see in their minds like, oh, they're not being compliant, they're not doing this or something. So they send them home saying that, well, they don't want help. And I feel like, you know, when we put all these stories, and the only story in the media of people not wanting help and being treatment resistant, that kind of gives validity to that idea and those actions that follow the idea, because everyone else is saying, well, you know, people with eating disorders don't want help. They push back against all treatment and whatever.
I also, before you go to the next slide, just because I talk, I had thought of two things kind of in the discussion, both in the slides and just kind of when we're talking. I think I might forget the other one. No brain. One of the big ones for me was in all of these movies and, you know, whatever kind of media you're watching or engaging in, everyone starts out with this perfect ideal life. And then it's like one day everything changes. And I, again, don't really know many, if any, people who that was the case for. Like, most people have a background of trauma and a generational trauma, familial trauma, different types of abuse, assault, etc. The list goes on. Just they be traumatized. And like, not only that, but the behaviors start gradually. It's not something that one day, like, this feeds into the choice trope. I can't think of words. That feeds into that so much, for lack of a better term. No brain. But it big time gives into that, because it's not usually one day this changes. It's so many things happen over so long, and then things aren't right anymore, and so it's a lot harder for you and everyone around you too to realize that things aren't supposed to be that way, especially if you have it within your family, who, again, lots of people I know learned those behaviors from the people around them. And I don't mean a friend at school. I don't mean a friend at school. I mean, they learned it from their mothers, their fathers sometimes, their older siblings. Like, it's learned behavior. It's just wild. There was another one that I had, but I lost it. Bestie, you're muted.
You are right. Thanks for that one. The last little slide I had was, are there any good representations? And I would beg to differ, yes. Are they perfect? No, but there are some good ones. The first one, which I cannot recommend anymore, is called Solace. It's a film. It's on Showtime right now, but it's based off of a short film by the same name, which I think is on Amazon Prime. But if anyone needs a Showtime login, I got you. But it's about a bulimic Black teenager growing up in an abusive home, and it's so good. It's so good. Very good. This Is Us, but only the most recent episode. The first episode where they talked about eating disorders was a mess. And honestly, I might change this based on where they go with this plot line. It was okay. I would say it's okay. I enjoyed the fact about it that we see her struggling again after a long time, because I feel like that's more realistic. You don't just recover and whatever. And then Living with an Eating Disorder, which is a YouTube short film about a a Black girl, and she's basically like going through her day of like having an eating disorder. And I really like it because it's not glamorized at all. It's actually very mundane, which I think eating disorders are. Eating disorders are very boring most of the time, which is not captured in any of these films. And then Strong Independent Woman, which is the short film by Jeanette McCurdy. Jeanette McCurdy, yeah, she also has a podcast about eating disorders. And I know, right? And so this one's called Strong Independent Woman, and this one is kind of like what you were talking about, Tree. She's learning these behaviors like from her mother, basically, and they're kind of navigating that, which is actually what happened in Jeanette McCurdy's real life. So very fun. Stigma, which is a short film about a Black girl with an eating disorder and like experiencing stigma and stuff, because she's a Black girl with an eating disorder. Me Little Me, which is not released yet, but I can say with my whole chest that it's gonna be good. It's based off of a short film called Little Elizabeth, which is kind of the movie is supposed to serve as a prequel for the short film. But this is like, it's an all Black cast, written, directed, produced by Black people, crowdfunded. And it's like talking about her experiences with an eating disorder growing up and like how it changed going into adulthood. And then Civil War Sickness, which is my personal favorite short film ever, which is so good. It's basically her like in the grocery store for most of it, but it's got this like poem going under the back of it that I really like, and it's just visually very cute. And it's also another Black person with an eating disorder. And yeah. Vimeo, I was looking today on Vimeo, just looking for short films, and literally so many of them look so good with like diverse characters and production teams and stuff. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm definitely planning on getting to it. I bet I could knock them all out in one day because they're all like 8 minutes. But yeah, but those are my recommendations. And obviously we got
Is that a podcast episode idea I hear?
Mood, yes. And then wait, we do have one more slide. Ha ha! Self plug. Want an in-depth look at individual pieces, so kind of like what we did for Starving in Suburbia today, but long form and us making a lot more jokes. Hop on the podcast train. We're starting a podcast called In Bad Taste, where we just talk about eating disorders, eating disorder movies. Yeah, I think that's it. Is that all? Heck yeah. Okay. Wow, that was all. Look at that. We hit right on an hour. That's fantastic. Does anyone have any final thoughts or anything?
Can you actually share the would you be willing to share the PowerPoint with us?
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to look at the ones that you guys thought were good.
Yeah, for sure I will. I'll drop it in the group me.
Final thoughts, because I was thinking about this while you were talking. Notice how the Vimeo short films and all the good ones are not the ones that get attention. Underfunded, under promoted, because no one wants to do those ones, because no one's gonna watch them, and it's the worst thing because those are the best ones.
The only one that gets attention. The only one that gets attention is that one where she's digging a hole. Y'all know the one. I think it's called My Friend Anna. She's like,
oh my God. I watched that when I was like 11 years old, and I have not forgotten it since. Yeah. I wish. What is it with digging holes in YouTube?
Yeah.
Because it's that, and there's that Sims video too. Like, someone got some inspiration from somewhere, but it wasn't good.
I guess people with eating disorders be digging holes. Oh. All right, well, that's all we had.
Thank you, guys.